Welcome to Stories Between Us, a podcast of short, fictional stories about the lives, tension, and intimacy between queer men. These episodes are for mature audiences and may include explicit themes. Told through AI voice narration, each episode drops you into a moment, a glance, a decision, a connection that lingers. Stories that feel real, sometimes sexy, sometimes messy, and always rooted in what's felt, even when it's never said. It started the night before. October air sharp against my skin as we slipped through the sliding doors of a downtown hotel, both of us laughing harder than the moment called for. It wasn't our first time sneaking away, but something about the season made it feel different. Halloween just days away. Streets outside scattered with plastic skeletons and flickering jack-o'-lanterns. We weren't supposed to be there. Both of us had lives waiting across town. But the city was already dressed in disguise, and it felt easy to wear one too. Inside the hotel room, the air was heavy with cologne and liquor. We'd drained half the bottle before clothes had come off, before the night collapsed into sheets and dripping sweat. It should have ended then. Should have been nothing but a seasonal ghost story I'd carry quietly. But morning came, and he was still there. Checkout had passed, housekeeping knocked twice, still he stayed. Stretched across the bed fine as hell. Sheets low on his hips, chest catching the blue flicker of a muted TV. I stood at the window, shirt half buttoned, telling myself I had a flight to catch. When I reached for my bag, his hand caught my wrist. Warm, firm, a hold that wasn't asking. He pulled me back in the bed, and in that moment, every excuse I'd rehearsed fell flat. The room was dark except for the TV glow and the weak line of light cutting under the blackout curtain. His scent clung to the sheets. I sat on the edge, pretending to resist, until his hand slid down, brushing my belt, stopping in that spot that made my dick jump. The way he lingered told me everything. Leaving wasn't an option. I leaned in first, just enough to feel the heat radiating off his skin. He shifted, his body hardening as my hand traced down his stomach. His fingers dragged against my chest, rough and slow. He sat up, lips brushing my neck before finding my mouth. When he pushed me back, I didn't fight it. His weight pressed down, his hips grinding against mine, every thrust sharpening the air between us. The headboard tapped once, then again, each sound louder against the quiet of the muted TV. My body arched to meet him, to take more, to let him own what the night had already promised. His eyes locked on mine, chest heaving, pupils blown wide like he was both inside me and outside of himself. I gripped harder, nails down his back, dragging moans from his throat he didn't mean to let slip. He collapsed into me, body shuddering, face buried against my chest. The room was silent again. Only the faint sound of the fan, the muted TV, the echo of what we'd done. I glanced at the clock. Too late for my flight. Lying there, skin to skin, sheets heavy with us. It didn't matter. Outside, the world was pumpkins and masks. But in that bed, in that moment, the scariest thing wasn't what waited outside. It was how much I wanted to stay. Thank you for listening to Stories Between Us, a podcast about queer male connection, tension, and everything that gets felt but not always said. Follow Stories Between Us anthology on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you like what you hear, leave a comment and rate the show so more people can find us. Welcome to Stories Between Us, a podcast of short, fictional stories about the lives, tension, and intimacy between queer men. These episodes are for mature audiences and may include explicit themes. Told through AI voice narration, each episode drops you into a moment, a glance, a decision, a connection that lingers. Stories that feel real. Sometimes sexy, sometimes messy, and always rooted in what's felt, even when it's never said. He said he didn't usually paint men. Said it quiet, like a confession he'd given before, soft enough to make me wonder if he believed it himself. The studio was upstairs from a used bookstore. Walls sweating with summer heat, no AC, just a fan pushing air that never reached far enough. Canvas scraps curled in the corners. Music played low from an old speaker, barely louder than the hum of traffic below. It was a space that felt borrowed, and still, every inch of it belonged to him. He didn't talk much. He worked instead. Tight tank top streaked with dried paint, green joggers hanging low on his hips, shoulders locked with focus. Every few minutes, his eyes lifted from the canvas, found my body, then snapped back again. Not just looking, tracing, hesitant and hungry at once. At first it was technical. Tilt your chin, relax your hand. Hold still, the kind of commands that weren't commands at all. More like tests, ways of seeing if I'd give in to his control. I did, without asking why, without needing to. He asked about the shadows on my collarbone. He stepped closer, glove on, cloth damp in his hand. He wiped the sweat from my skin like it was part of the process. But we both knew he just needed a reason to touch me. That touch never left the room. Even when he pulled back, it lingered in the air, in the silence, in the way the paintbrush dragged harder across the canvas after. For the next part of the painting, he had me take my shirt off, jeans loose at my waist. He froze mid-paint stroke, brush in the air, like I'd pulled something out of him he wasn't ready to face. Colors blended into each other, heavy strokes across the canvas, sweat darkening his tank top until it clung to him like a second skin, jaw tight. Every movement was a release he wasn't giving to me, but through me. When he stepped back, the silence hit different. His hands shook, covered in color. Chest rising like he'd come down from something he didn't mean to let out. I walked slowly, looked at what he had painted. It wasn't just me on that canvas. It was me undone. Mouth parted, chest alive, eyes heavy like I was being held by something I wanted but couldn't name. It was me in the most beautiful way. It was like he had captured my soul. Thank you for listening to Stories Between Us, a podcast about queer male connection, tension, and everything that gets felt but not always said. Follow Stories Between Us anthology on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you like what you hear, leave a comment and rate the show so more people can find us. Welcome to Stories Between Us, a podcast of short, fictional stories about the lives, tension, and intimacy between queer men. These episodes are for mature audiences and may include explicit themes. Told through AI voice narration, each episode drops you into a moment, a glance, a decision, a connection that lingers. Stories that feel real, sometimes sexy, sometimes messy, and always rooted in what's felt, even when it's never said. It began with the clink of beer bottles against wood. Two men leaning against opposite sides of a backyard fence, the kind of summer night where sweat clung to their shirts and the silence between them carried more weight than the words. Neither of them was supposed to be outside that long. A quick hello, a laugh about the heat, a shared beer passed over the fence. That's all it should have been. But the way their fingers touched when he handed over the beer bottle lingered too long. The way their eyes stayed locked after a joke faded hinted at something neither of them wanted to say out loud. Each night they found reasons to be outside, hanging out while both their homes were asleep. Watering plants that didn't need it. Checking mail that wasn't there. Standing too close to the wood fence that separated their yards. The fence wasn't keeping them apart. It was the only thing holding them back. The talk stretched into midnight, voices dropping lower. What started as small talk turned into quiet secrets. Who they wished they were. What they couldn't say inside their own homes. And the moment those words were spoken into the night air, something dangerous took root. One night, the laughter fell away. He leaned in, elbow resting on the top of the fence, lips just inches away. The other didn't step back, didn't look away. For a moment, the silence between them was louder than the crickets, louder than the night itself. The first time they kissed, it didn't feel real. By the second and third kiss, they were like school kids hiding something from everyone they knew. It wasn't planned. Every interaction grew their attraction. Every laugh they shared carried guilt neither of them could shake. And one night, one of them decided he needed to come on the other side of the fence. And what began as small talk became something they could never take back. The next morning, the fence still stood, but the secret had already crossed it. And fences, no matter how tall, can't hold back what's already broken free. Thank you for listening to Stories Between Us, a podcast about queer male connection, tension, and everything that gets felt but not always said. Follow Stories Between Us anthology on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you like what you hear, leave a comment and rate the show so more people can find us. Welcome to Stories Between Us, a podcast of short, fictional stories about the lives, tension, and intimacy between queer men. These episodes are for mature audiences and may include explicit themes. Told through AI voice narration, each episode drops you into a moment, a glance, a decision, a connection that lingers. Stories that feel real, sometimes sexy, sometimes messy, and always rooted in what's felt, even when it's never said. The fashion world sells beauty, bright lights, runways, applause. But behind the scenes, It runs on hunger, ambition, and desire, and sometimes betrayal. In this story, three men find themselves caught in a triangle where talent isn't enough, love isn't safe, and even loyalty can be stolen. Adrian is the up-and-coming designer, young, sharp, desperate to be taken seriously. His nights are spent sketching on the floor of his studio, believing hard work will earn him a place on the fashion runway. Victor's his mentor, older, successful, already a name in the industry. To Adrian, he's a guide. To Victor, mentorship is all about control. And Caleb, Adrian's boyfriend, charming, magnetic, the kind of man who lights up a room. At first, he was Adrian's anchor in the chaos. But even anchors can be pulled loose. That's how we get here. A studio draped in silk and shadows, designs on the table, and a betrayal that's more personal than professional. Adrian pushed open the door to his studio. The space that had always been his escape now felt foreign. The air smelled like cologne that wasn't his. Music hummed from the corner speaker. Not his playlist, but Victor's. And at the center of it all, Caleb leaned too close, flipping through his sketches while Victor smirked at his side. The collection he'd been building for months. Bold cuts, rich colors, every idea he thought was his. Spread open like someone else already owned them. Victor didn't flinch when he noticed him. He only looked up, smile calm, voice smooth, asking why Adrian was surprised. In this industry, he said, designs were only as good as the name attached to them, and Victor had already pitched them under his own name. Adrian's chest burned. Caleb stepped back, guilt flashing across his face, but not enough to erase the heat in his eyes. He looked torn, caught between apology and the pull of temptation. Victor stood slowly, tracing his hand along a mannequin, silk brushing his fingers as he walked toward Adrian. He told him success wasn't about talent. It was about sacrifice, about knowing what and who you were willing to give up. Adrian's fists curled tight at his sides. He wanted to scream, to tear the sketches from the table, but Victor's presence was overwhelming. His control made anger blur into something darker. Caleb didn't move. He just watched and waited, trying not to be seen. Victor leaned close enough for Adrian to feel the heat of his breath. He told him to think carefully, to decide if he wanted to be remembered as the man who fought back or the man who gave in. And then, just as calmly, he stepped back, collected his coat, and walked out. Adrian turned away, his sketches still open on the table, his signature scrawled at the bottom, already feeling like a ghost. In fashion, every cut tells a story, but some threads unravel faster than others. And when ambition, betrayal, and desire are stitched together, someone always gets left undone. This is part 2 of Runway Betrayal. The show must go on. The flashbulbs start before the lights even drop. Cameras, chatter, the echo of names being shouted near the runway entrance. Months after the studio betrayal, the stolen collection his mentor had now used for himself. The banners say, Victor de la Spring Show. Adrian stood in the back. He shouldn't have come. But when a dream you built walks the runway wearing someone else's name, you have to see how it ends. Models glide through the light in pieces Adrian knows from memory. The sharp-angled jacket cut from midnight wool. The hand-dyed plum silk that took 3 nights to get right. The top stitch pattern that was supposed to be his signature. Each look draws cheers. Each step feels like a theft happening in slow motion. In the front row, Caleb sits where Victor once promised Adrian would be. Perfect smile, designer suit, pretending not to notice the man standing in the shadows watching him. When the final model turns, applause shakes the room. Victor steps onto the runway, collecting praise that was never his to claim. Champagne corks echo backstage. Adrian slips behind the curtain before the crowd floods in. The air back there is humid. Makeup powder, sweat, the electric rush of success. He moves through racks of fabric, every piece a reminder of how easily talent gets repackaged when someone with power wants it more. Then he hears it, low laughter, a door half closed, the thud of a hand against a wall. Voices he knows too well. One smooth and certain, one trying too hard to keep quiet. He stops. The room smells like perfume and steam. The sounds sharpen into something undeniable. He doesn't need to look. He already knows. Victor and Caleb were fucking backstage. For a moment, time folds. The sketches, the promises, the months of late nights, they all collapse into a single heartbeat. When he finally pushes the door wider, the truth hits like stage light. Victor straightening his jacket, Caleb stepping back fast, both caught in that guilty stillness that says everything. Adrian doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. The look on his face burns hotter than any words. Victor smooths his sleeves, calm as ever, eyes steady. You still think this business runs on love? He continues. It runs on leverage. He adjusts his cuff, almost bored. People get close to who they need. I taught you that. Caleb reaches out, but Adrian moves first. Just a step back, enough distance to make it clear it's over. Victor lights an unfinished blunt. Smoke curls between them, gray and smug. You wanted to know how this world works, he says softly. Now you do. Adrian looks past them to the garments hung along the wall, his work displayed like trophies. He walks out without a word. Outside, the night hums with applause spilling from the tent. Streetlights cut through mist from the earlier rain, turning puddles into mirrors. He pulls a folded sketch from his pocket, one of the first he ever drew for the collection, and stares at the fading lines until the ink bleeds. Somewhere inside, Victor is taking a bow. Caleb is smiling beside him. The cameras are catching every flash of it. Adrian drops the ruined sketch into the gutter. It floats once, then sinks. In fashion, everyone's selling something. A dream, a look, a lie. Tonight, he finally learned the difference. Thank you for listening to Stories Between Us, a podcast about queer male connection, tension, and everything that gets felt, but not always said.